Welcome everyone to this session of the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. I'm glad you're still here with us. I hope you're getting a lot out of these sessions. And for the next hour, or 50 minutes I should say, what we're going to do is we're going to go through how do you bring this stuff together and why would you want to do this, and give you some examples of how this stuff can fit and lead to new solutions, new ways that you can offer value to your end users. And with that, we're going to start our presentation here. So again, if you have not marked your calendars, if you have not signed up, please do so. You need to come to the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference. We're going to have it March 23rd of next year. You haven't lived until you've been to one of these conferences. They are so incredible. I'm telling you, I've been to every one of them. They're just wonderful to go to. We also give a big thanks to all of our generous sponsors, without which we would not be able to put on this event for you. So let's give them a hand. You're sitting there. And then for those of you who have joined and who have no idea who this guy is in the hat, my name is Treb Gatte, and I am coming to you live from Seattle, Washington in the US. I am originally from Louisiana, so nothing in my name is spelled the way it's pronounced. And I am CEO of a company called Marquee Insights. We are a Power BI consultancy, and I myself am a Power BI MVP. I also used to work in Office a long time ago for Microsoft, so this is why I'm sort of in between these two things. And one of the things that I'm going to bring to you today is when we have the power of the Office 365 platform and we combine this with something like Power BI, the combination really yields more than what you originally had. And so what we want to do is go through some of the different ways that you can integrate these things. Some of them we're going to take stuff that is in Office, we're going to push it into Power BI. Others, we're going to go the other way. We're going to put Power BI into a Sway and then put a Sway into a communications site. Wow, why would I want to do that? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. And so with that, let's get started. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about business intelligence, because I think there's some people aren't really clear on what it is, because they think, well, we're just creating a new version of reporting. And the reality is it's not. It's something much more than just simply reporting. If you look at what we do in our organizations, work today is a social exercise. We spend a lot of time getting together, talking through things, asking questions, trying to find answers. And so if you think about it, these are all managed conversations. And a lot of times what we're talking about is the latest state of the conversation. Sure, we call these staff meetings, sometimes project staff meetings, Scrum meetings, they're all meetings, trust me. But we need data, and that's where business intelligence comes in, is that we need the data to provide those answers to the questions that are being asked. And in a perfect world, business intelligence should support those conversations in a very clear and concise manner. Also, you want your data to be where the conversations are being held. And this is why I want to go through the integration of these products, because it's one thing to come up with a whole bunch of Power BI reports that now I have to click off and go to the Power BI portal and go figure out which of the 50 reports that I need to go look up to get my answer. And 10 minutes later, I've been interrupted twice, and now I can't remember what I was looking for. That's a normal day. And the fact that we're sitting at home now makes it even worse, because the dog started barking because the UPS guy showed up in the middle of this. And of course, you've got another Teams call starting in 5 minutes. The distraction factor is high. So we want to make sure that our content is where you are, where you need the answers right then and there. And so there's a number of ways that you can combine these into some very interesting solutions. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about is we're going to, really the why. So we're starting to talk about that already. But where do I integrate? What are the various touch points where I have the capabilities to integrate Power BI into the Office platform, or vice versa? There's a lot of complementary functionality there. Also, does it work on mobile? Why is that even a question? Well, we're going to talk about why that is in a moment. And then we're going to go through 5 examples of the types of integration that you could do right now without having to know any code whatsoever. And trust me, when I go through this stuff and I show you how easy it is, you're going to be like, why didn't I do that before? Well, now when you leave the session, you'll be able to do some impressive stuff when you get back into it. So with that, let's go ahead. And first thing I want to talk about, though, is licensing. It's a necessary evil, I know. It's also one of the biggest questions that everybody asks when they are first starting to go down this road of integration. If I embed a Power BI report into my SharePoint site, do I still need to get a Power BI license for my end user? Can I use publish to web? Can I somehow avoid the license fee? Well, the bad news is, or the good news is, depending how you look at it, is you have to license both creator of the content and consumer of the content. There's no getting around that. Now, how you do that is really where you define which license you're going to use. And the question that you really have to answer when you're thinking about this and you're thinking about licensing somebody is, can I generate more than $120 worth of value for that user for the whole year? Which, if you think about it, your average office worker is about $50 an hour fully loaded. This is average. So we're talking about 2.5 hours worth of their time. If you can save them 2.5 hours of time for the entire year, it's worth it to get that license. And so how do I get that license? When do I need to get the license? Well, Power BI has 3 licenses. There is the free license, which I think should be called the training license, because it's intended to help you get familiar with the tool, to work on your own reporting for your own self, not being able to share it, without having to pay for it, which is pretty cool because, you know, if I'm managing something or I just want to extend my skills, I can learn Power BI without having to pay for it, which is, like I said, it's a really cool thing and helps bring a lot of people in. When I get to the point, though, where I need to start sharing it, where I need to package this up and share it with my coworkers or my directors, my VPs, that sort of thing, then we have to look at either Pro or Premium. Now, the difference is this: when you're using a Pro license, you are licensing each individual user. And another place that you could find a Pro license is that if you're in the Office world, if you have an Office 365 E5 license, the Pro license is included in it. And so per user licensing works pretty well up to about 400, 450 people, because then the overhead of managing per user licenses actually becomes more than the cost of moving to the next level. And this is Premium. So Premium, you're licensing capacity, the capacity to refresh your models, and also the ability to share your content with whoever has security access. So for those organizations that are scaling above the 500 user mark, say, Premium is really the way they should be looking to go. On a per user basis, it's going to be much cheaper to go that way than it will be on the Pro side of it. But again, you have to be aware of the differences. And if you are sharing content through Teams or SharePoint, something like that, at the bare minimum, the end user has to have a Pro license. Now, if you have Premium, then the consumer part of the equation is covered by the Premium license. And that's why a lot of larger companies are moving toward Premium, because then if the VP of sales wants access to a report, they just simply have to give them security access and they're up and running. Before, you had to go and do a license request and get it granted, and it was a big nightmare. So we don't want to do that. The other note I'll say is I've seen, and I continue to see this on the web and on Facebook and Reddit and all the other forums, oh, you can just use publish to web to do that. Please, 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 I beg of you, do not use that function unless you are a nonprofit that is publishing public information. Because when you use publish to web, it becomes immediately indexed by all the major search engines. You also provide Microsoft with the ability to feature your content on one of their data galleries in the public. It's probably not the place you want to put your third quarter financials, just simply because you needed to embed it in SharePoint and not pay a license. The average cost of a data leak these days is about $4 million. So again, $120 a year versus $4 million a year, or $4 million an incident, I think the 120 is a better choice here. All right, so with that, let's go on to the next phase here. So now that you understand the cost of it, I think the value is really where this is going to pay for itself tremendously. And it's really, why are we integrating? And again, what I'm trying to do is shorten the time between the question being asked and the answer being delivered. Because that's the thing about BI. It's not about writing more reports. It's about delivering answers. And that's what we truly want today. We use our voice assistants because we want answers. When we ask for what's the weather report, we're not expecting, a report, if you will. So it's a different mentality. And where we want to integrate is really wherever the user is. Thanks to this virus that has gone around the world and caused all sorts of havoc, we have seen a ground shift movement of people working remotely and now using Teams exclusively during the day. Consequently, one of the things I'm going to show you is how to get Power BI content into Teams. However, we use other tools. We use SharePoint sites. So communication sites are a great place to host Power BI content. But also in Power BI, you may have things where I'm looking at something and then I need to request something else. I'm using, say, an Office Form Pro for that. How do I integrate that into my Power BI stuff? Or I have an executive dashboard and the executives want to have a private conversation around what the content is that they're seeing. We're going to show you how to integrate Yammer into a dashboard for just that reason. So again, we want to integrate to bring the functionality closer to where the need is, but also make it where it's where the users are having their conversation. They should not be clicking off. They should not have to go looking for it. It should just be there at their fingertips. A lot of times we refer to this as the next best action. So when you're looking at whatever your solution is, and you're thinking, well, when I have a problem, what's the next best action I will likely do? If it's related to BI, then this is a perfect spot where you might want to integrate your Power BI content. All right, we'll go on from there. The mobile. So, does it work on mobile? And I get asked this question a good bit. And part of it is because mobile is actually our fastest growing segment of usage across the board. Executives love mobile, at least they were when they were traveling, 50 million miles a year. But we're still working at home, and I don't know about you, but I've got multiple PCs. I've got my phone, I've got my laptop up. I'm checking, I'm multitasking all the time. I need every screen to work as well as the other. And the good news is, this is something Microsoft has really done its homework on. I'm so blown away when I did this the first time. We were working with this construction group, and they needed a way to, explain the projects. So they had a number of projects that were out there, but they were spending a lot of time updating this every month because they had to go to this board to be reviewed. And the write-up was basically, here's the project, here's the final vision, blah blah blah, and then here's basically a screenshot of the dashboard. And we started looking at that saying, we can do this better. And so we did. We put that Power BI in Sway, and I'm going to show you how you do that. And then we took it further and said, okay, we have a number of these projects going on, so let's put those on a communication site. So now I have a catalog of all of my major projects with the context in Sway, and then the live dashboard's right there in the Sway. And you're going, ooh, this sounds pretty cool. But wait, there's more. Then they wanted it to be mobile enabled. And you know what? We pulled it up on the SharePoint mobile app, and it worked. It worked without us having to do a thing. It just rendered beautifully. So does it work on mobile is almost not a question anymore. Of course it works on mobile. If you've done the work, it works beautifully. And so don't be afraid to try it. If you haven't loaded the SharePoint mobile apps, if you haven't loaded the Power BI mobile apps, you should totally do so. It'll revolutionize the way that you look at this data. In fact, I have a dashboard on my Apple Watch here, and few people know that you can do this, but I have key indicators from my web traffic that are pushed to my watch. And at any given time, I could look these up and see where we stand. Again, this is not reporting. This is delivering answers where I need it, when I need it, and how I need it. So again, think past the page and think more of what you're trying to get to, the question that you're trying to answer. So the types of integration, I've been talking about this a little bit, is how do we integrate Office functionality into Power BI? So I'm going to show you how to do that. If you've never built an app within Power BI, you're going to learn how to do that. This is the preferred way to distribute Power BI content to our end users. And guess what? With our new navigational functions, we can actually incorporate other stuff in there. We're also going to integrate Yammer into a dashboard. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Then we're going to flip it, and we're going to integrate Power BI into a SharePoint site. And there's some things that you have to be aware of. And this is also, we're going to show you how to do the Sway integration, and then put this into SharePoint. Really cool. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to put Power BI into Teams, which I have to say used to be really painful. And we were always like, yeah, you have to know how to do this and this. They fixed that. Let me tell you, the Teams team rolled out something, a few weeks back. Integrating Power BI now to Teams is very easy to do. So with that said, let's continue on. And if anybody has any questions at any time, just feel free to post them in the chat. We'll get to those. So first, let's start off with integrating Office functionality into Power BI. And so for that, I'm going to shift, and unfortunately I have to look down for this so I can see my screen. So I'm going to shift it over here for you like that. I'm going to go over here, and so here is my my workspace in Power BI. So if you've never seen this before, they've now made it where it looks a lot like a, almost like a SharePoint library, if you will, of content. And over here, if you've never used forms before, you go to forms.office.com, and there are a number of forms here that you can use. And so I'm just going to pick one of the ones that I've created. At some point here it comes up. And so I'm going to say, let's just do untitled form here, or fun facts about you. That was always a good one. But if I wanted to share this, if I go into it, there is a link that you can get. And so this was a bunch of, we did this at a conference to see what kinds of things you could do with AI. But there are some, there's a link in here under settings. I can get to it there. Oh, under share, sorry. Helps click in the right place. That here's the copy. So this link here will take you to this form. So the thing is, this form could be anything. It could be a request for an enhancement to a report. It could be to grant somebody else access. It could be a log that, yes, I took some training or something like that. It could be any number of things. But the thing is, this is one of the capabilities that you can integrate into Power BI today. So how this works is that when I'm in Power BI, and I go to the right tab, again, the workspace is where you stage your content. So when I develop my content in Power BI Desktop and I make my reports, so if I was making a report like this, where I have this report here, so maybe I've made this report, I can go ahead and I can publish this up to the service. So I could do something like, my mouse is getting ahead of itself here. There we go. See me first, and then click select. And it's publishing. So at this point, it's getting ready, pushing it up to the cloud, it's creating all the content there. And the workspace then is where you could basically test it at that point. You're staging it. It's also helpful if you're working on a V2 version, you push the V2 version to your workspace while the V1 is your app. So think about it that way. So now it's done. And so I'm going to go back to my space here. Now you see I've got some new stuff. I've got the instructor copy here, and I've got the database. I don't know why I'm getting this pop-up here. It's kind of weird what it's doing. But at this point, I want to create an app out of this. And if you've never used apps, I call it the Tetris block. It's this little emblem here. If you open up the hamburger menu, you will see it says apps next to it. By the way, I don't think we're feeding the Microsoft devs quite well enough, because they call this the waffle, and this is the hamburger menu. So I keep looking for the bacon, but I haven't found it yet. So anyway, the apps is where you would go to use this stuff. So I'm going to create an app. And the way I'm going to create the app is you go up here, and I'm going to do update app, because I've already created one. And it's called See Me First. And again, I don't know why I'm getting this stupid pop-up. Let's see if we can make it go away. There we go. Nope, it still doesn't like me. But there are three screens here. There's a setup, and then there's a navigation. And in the navigation here, you can actually add new links. So I can do new and do a link. And then in the link here, I could say, request form like this. And then I could put in my forms in, URL here. I could say open it up in a new tab, or open it up content area. And then I'm just going to say no group. I'm just going to put it at the top. But again, you could easily use this to report issues, that sort of thing. Could be any number of things. And then I'm going to say permissions, which I'm just going to say entire org, click update app, and it's going to say, are you sure? And you say yes. And then of course it publishes very fast. I'm going to go to the app right away. And now when this renders, and it's got to build it there for a minute, but you will see my request form now. It's here in the left nav. So this left nav should look familiar if you're coming from a SharePoint world, because it's very similar to what we have in our sites today. But again, I can click this and you'll see it open up the new form in a new tab. Good to go, people can use it. You can also put in links to your SharePoint site. So say you have this set of reports being over your operations area, and you want them to know, the catalog, other key data that they need to refer to maybe when they're looking at this stuff. You can also put those links in here as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be driven from SharePoint. It could be driven from Power BI as well. All right, so with that, let me show you something else that you might be interested in. And this is, if you've never used Yammer, trust me, you really need to look at this. And I think Yammer sometimes has gotten a bad rap. because people go, oh, it's like Facebook. Well, no, it's not like Facebook. It's the way I had it described to me is it's a crowdsourced knowledge base that is continually growing over time. You're harvesting and gathering the combined knowledge of your organization into a place where you can read it, you can search it, and you can use it to learn further from. So that's not Facebook. Facebook and Twitter are sort of the ongoing stream of random observations in my mind. So this is a little bit different. This helps you with your job, and if it's done right, if it's managed well, this can become very lively communities, like we have with Tech Community for SharePoint, like we have with community.powerbi.com. Like if you have a problem, you go there first to see if somebody else has already solved it. And Yammer is how you generate those same type of communities within your own organization. Now, one of the things that we have within Power BI is we have this. So this is a dashboard. And up here at the top, we have comments. So I could make a comment on this particular dashboard here, and other people will see it. In fact, anybody with access to this particular dashboard will see it. The other thing is it doesn't really have a way to segment by time. And so we had a situation where we had some executives who wanted to post comments on the dashboard, but it was based on whatever meeting they were having. And we said, you know what, how about we do this then as a Yammer form? And so what we did is we created a Yammer form like this. So we just called it Executive Portfolio Status. We gave a few people access. And then if you're looking at the interface here, you'll notice at the bottom, the very bottom on the right side, there's this embed this feed in your site. And what this does is it creates this embed here that you can copy. And then what we did, so we took that, make that close, and we went back here. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize with dashboards is that you can add a lot more content to dashboards than just Power BI. In fact, if you do add a tile here, you can see web content, you can see images, text boxes, you can put video. So if you have a YouTube video or Vimeo that explains what's on here, you can embed that. And if you have streaming data, if you've seen one of my other presentations where I show you how to use Power Automate to push data into a streaming data set, so I can see things as they're actually happening, you can put that on here too. But we're going to do a web content here. And this is where we put in our embed code. And so this is what you're seeing over here. So I just basically paste it in here like that. And essentially it's going to add it below here. And it says it's added, probably added it way at the bottom. But let's do this, just scroll. Yeah, it's just like this. So it's down here. This one I tweaked a little bit, I made it a little wider. But now if I have access to this particular site, I will see the stuff rendered. If I don't, it gives me this Yammer message that says I need to get access to it. But also I can post and say, we're going to talk about this. This is going to be the Wednesday, 2020 05/27 meeting, and we'll just do meeting notes like this. And so if I post that, then anybody could basically post their questions. We can go back and forth on the answers, and we're the only people that can see it. But it's right here where we're looking at these metrics. So if we're looking at this going, wow, our average project cost is, 321,000. Is that what we expected? Do we want less? That sort of thing. We don't seem to have, we have 3 red projects. What are we doing about those? Again, we can have that discussion right here. It makes it very easy to do this sort of thing. And again, I think people, when they look at Yammer, they don't realize that the power of this, just going beyond community, it makes it very, very handy to do this sort of stuff. Now, if I click on one of these slides, or one of these tabs, I should say, or tiles, come on, there we go. It takes me back to the actual report that this was built on. And if I go up here to the ellipsis menu, there is an embed code here. Wow, this is pretty cool. Now, this is where we can embed in SharePoint Online. If you have some sort of other website technology that you're using internally for your intranet, you can use the website or portal code that it generates. It generates, I think, an iframe for you. And then this is that publish to web I was telling you about earlier. Please, please, please don't use this unless you absolutely have truly public data to show the world. Otherwise, it will be truly public, and we don't want that to happen. But this is where you get this code from. Now, where do I use this? So if I'm going to a communication site, which I have up here, I'm going to go here, to my SharePoint site, and I'm going to do a new page. I'm going to come back to what I got here in a moment. Go back to home. There we go. And I want a new page here. If you haven't created a new modern page, these are fairly easy to create. In fact, I'm just going to use the blank template here, and I'm going to say create page, because on the modern experience, one of the things that they did, so I'm going to name the page. I'm going to say our reports. Nothing fantastic here, and I could put some text. So some text about this. Interesting. But what I really want to do is I want to show my reports here. So how do I do that? Well, if I click this plus here, I get the web part gallery that's available. And one of the things that's available under here is Power BI. So as I'm scrolling down, unfortunately, it starts with a P, so it is going to be toward the bottom. But we have the Power BI web part here. And the first thing it does is says add report. Now, what I have to do then is I have to go to my Power BI report here, where I was, and go to my embed and get my SharePoint Online code here. So this is this nice little icon, or this nice little URL here, and I hit Control-C. And then I go back, let's see, where was I? I was here, and I'm going to do add report, and it's going to pop up a place for me to paste that link. So I'm going to do Control-V as in Victor, and then if I wait just a second here, it should give me the page name. There we go. So I'm going to say page 1. I can choose which page I want. I can also choose, if I want 4:3 or 16:9. Now, most of my reports are designed for 16:9, so I'm going to leave that there. If you don't want your users to switch between the various pages of your report, you can actually turn off the navigation pane. If you want them to be able to dynamically filter in the spot here, you can actually show or hide the filter pane as well. And so you can see right now I've got my nice clickable report here. If I click on this, you'll see things change. It's interactive. And basically now I'm just going to go ahead and publish this. So this will save my page, publish it. It's ready to go. Put it anywhere in my site. And now, and I'm going to close this because I don't really want to share it with anybody. But now I could use this as is. I can basically be doing things. You can see I've got a pop-up here that works. So as I'm hovering over stuff, this is a nice little enhancement we did on one of the on the projects here. If it stopped moving, there we go. So it was working. It's taking it a minute, I'm sure. But and it's lagging for you as well. But trust me, whenever you hover over something like this, there's a pop-up window that we showed. We have a custom visual for that. But everything in here is interactive. So if I click on something, it cross filters, the filters work. And the net of it is they don't have to leave the page to go get the answers they're looking for. They're right there, right at their fingertips where they need it. And then tell you what I'm going to do. Let's do the Teams version, the Teams integration first. And then I'll come back and do the full Sway thing, because I think that one builds upon itself. It takes you a little bit longer to get through it. Now, if I wanted to integrate the same thing, the same report in Teams, how would I do that? So with Teams, they've made it a lot simpler, I have to say. And I'm going to switch over. I've got my team here. And this is, I'm actually going to do this in our speaker team, so this ought to be interesting. Which I don't have access to do it. Okay, so I'm going to switch, and hopefully it doesn't break anything. I go to my marquee insights. Oh, it's going into my call. I can't do that. All right, so up here at the top, let's see, how am I going to do this? Sorry about that. We didn't think this one through here. But anyway, in Teams itself, so if I'm in the General tab, usually up here there is a plus symbol. And when you click that, there is a Power BI UI that comes up. And essentially what this does is it allows you to pick through your apps or your workspaces, and you could find your report in there. And then what will happen is when you click on it, it will actually render the report here as a new tab. So just like I switched between Post and Wiki, I can have different reports in here. And so we've actually seen people who they've done things around like setting these up for their recurring meetings. So say I have a stand-up call every day at 3 o'clock, and I need to show some key stats. Well, instead of having to leave Teams, which is where we're running it, because maybe we have a planner board with all the work items, and we're showing how stuff is progressing, we can have our reports right here directly in Teams. And so again, it works. It works on mobile. It works easily. And I apologize. I didn't realize when I switched, it was going to switch things for me. Let me try it one more way, because I think what I can do is I can actually log into my Teams from here and be in Teams twice under two different tenants. So and if I could really type today, it'd be dangerous. So I don't know if you've ever seen me type. I type 140 words a minute, generally 80 words a minute forward, 60 words a minute backwards, trying to correct it. So in this case, I want to go into Teams, into my Teams, which this looks like it's going to work for me. And I'm going to add that Power BI app. All right, so this is going to work. Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. So in this case, I'm going to go to my training here, and I'm going to add a new tab. If it'll stop moving, there we go. And we got to wait for it to load. There we go. And then you see right here is bright yellow tile here. If we click this, it's going to pop up, and it's going to do a catalog of basically our workspaces and our apps. I want to share an app because, again, as I mentioned earlier, if you share the app, you can use your workspace to be working on V2 while you've got V1 in use. So I'm going to click on apps. I've got my See Me First right here, and the instructor copies what I want to see. Go ahead, and I'm not going to post to the channel because it's just you and I, but click Save, and then magic occurs. We see our report right here, all up in Teams where it's easy to see. I can do my hovers. I can do, click on stuff. Not sure why it's deciding to scroll on its own there. But again, all this stuff is working as it should be. So that, as I'm doing stuff, you can see that, it works, and it's right here where you need it to be, wherever you're working. All right, now let's go back. Now, if you've seen Sway before, it's been a very interesting tool because a lot of people have used it for things like web newsletters and such, or they've used it to communicate other things like things they want to put on the web. And it was sort of introduced almost as a magazine type of thing, web enabled. But we found that it's actually very helpful for adding context for a lot of reports and for a lot of BI content. Because again, if I see something once a month, I may not necessarily remember exactly what it is that I'm looking at, or why this is important, or what is it we're doing again? I mean, there's a lot of questions there. And of course, the more meetings you have, the harder it is to remember exactly what you're looking at. So we have a problem here in Seattle, and this whole problem has actually been eclipsed quite a bit by the fact that the COVID virus came around, and all of a sudden we stopped paying attention to this. But before COVID, we actually had a big problem in Washington around the measles. And in fact, we did an analysis of this to see, how well or how not well is our school system holding up under this particular, problem that we have. And so we found that certain school districts were really not well immunized. We had essentially schools without group immunity. There's a lot of problems here. But if you're just looking at this dashboard by itself, you may not really realize why this is a problem. I mean, most people these days have been immunized against, they've had their MMR, their measles, mumps, rubella, and for the most part, we've not had to deal with this. And it's only been recently that this has had a resurgence. So how do you explain that context? How do you really drive the point home that this is a problem and then show this in that context? And this is where Sway comes in. And so we started looking at this. And so we went over to Sway, and then we built a Sway, which if you've ever done this before, Sway actually makes it pretty easy to do because essentially it's a, of course, I'm not signed in, but it's a series of blocks. But the thing is, you can do stuff like, you can make it very visual. So in this case, we wanted to highlight, our measles immunization problem. And of course, this poor child here is crying because he's about to get, poked by a needle. Nobody likes needles. We know that. We've all been through this. But as I'm going through here, I can scroll through this and I can see, well, how is this still a problem here? And then we have this news write-up that talks about, here's why we have the problem. Here's how it came about. Here's some stories of where, this has really caused a massive problem within our schools. And so as you're reading this, you're getting more and more of that rich context around this data that you're about to see. And so as we keep going, then we start going, well, group immunity is threatened by low immunization rates. And then we follow it up with that dashboard that we were talking about earlier. And again, this is totally clickable. I can be in here and, look at stuff. You can see all the numbers change. You can see it change where it's zooming in and all that. So it's more interactive. It's more engaging. The original idea behind this, again, was construction. I need to explain the project that we're working on. I need to show you what the site's going to look like when it's done. What did it look like before? What's the economic value of doing this? What's the new cool things we're going to get out of doing this? And oh, by the way, here's how the project is going. Live fed from whatever system you're tracking it in. And guess what? You've not had to do anything to maintain this data. It becomes self-maintaining. It becomes a wealth of knowledge that becomes self-perpetuating. And all you had to do was pull it together. So in order to do this, then, let me go into here. Of course, you want me to refresh the page. All right, so if I can get into Sway where I can edit, it keeps telling me to sign in, and it was already signed in. Let's do it one more. I have several Sways open. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hopefully edit this thing. And let's see, you're going to go down here. So no, let's do sign in again. It's just having some challenges today. Oh, goodness gracious. Nothing like typing your password in front of the world here. So please bear with me. And of course, I've got like 15,000 passwords. We'll do that. And of course, okay, so here we go. So here's the edit view. And in this case, it's like I'm creating my blocks, so I can put in different blocks and whatnot. And one of the blocks, if you scroll down here, so as we got in, here's all the text we put in. And it's like, okay, I want to put in an embed card. And so the thing is, when you go here and say, I want to put in a new embed card. So I'll click, in here. And there's different, text, there's media. And again, this is where an embed card goes in. So the first time we tried this, we said, you know what? Let's just see if we can take that embed code that we got from our Power BI thing here. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do embed and I'm going to do website or portal. It's got to work, right? Because, everything that we've done so far should work. So I'm going to use the iframe here. And then we're going to go back to Sway. This one, it says paste your embed code here. So we pasted it. And then we said, you know what, let's go ahead and see if we can see it. And so we hit play. And of course, we got an error because basically it said, you know what? And if you said, it's like, sorry, we're having a problem understanding your embed code. And we're sitting there going, what is going on here? What's the problem? Well, it turns out that Sway doesn't like one particular thing that Power BI does. And that is this. You see the height and width? If we simply take this out, and we sort of came across this by accident, but we were at that point of going, we're going to make this work or else. But if you do that, notice everything's hunky-dory now, because Sway wants to be able to have control to format it within its own confines. And that's really all you have to do is take that website embed code, take out the height and the width specification in it, put it in an embed card, and then when you play it, there it is. It's going to be in here, ready to go, refreshing. And again, I can be pulling in this information from all sorts of sources. I could have multiples of these in here, pulling in this information for me without having to maintain it. So we said, okay, well, this is cool. What more can we do here? And so this is where we went into, so if you go in here, go back to edit, there is a share here. And this is where if you share this, So I can get an embed code for my Sway. Okay, this is pretty cool. So then if I go back to my page here, let's see this one. So this is the one we loaded our content on, and I edit this guy, or this particular page. You can actually embed the Sway directly in this page. And so now we're taking an embedded content in embedded content and putting it directly here. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say add embedded code. So it's going to add over here, and I'm going to paste this in like that. And there you go. So now I've got not only my report, but I've got my Sway in here with my report already embedded in here. So again, I've got if you look at the story you're telling, and that's really what this comes down to. You want to tell these nice, rich digital stories. It's really about the context that you can add to the report. Because if you think about it, most of the time that we spend when we're communicating status, when we're sharing this information with people, is the human standing there explaining the numbers, providing that context, providing what the why, if you will. But what happens in this new 24/7 economy where we're all working from home? We don't have that ability to do that anymore. So how do we do that? We have to come up with new ways to offset the need for us to be standing there providing the story. And the way we can do that is we can use the tools that we have in hand, like Sway, like Power BI, like SharePoint, to create much richer stories that then don't need us to stand there and give you the story. The story is right there along with the content. And again, with Sway, there's all sorts of other things you can embed in there. The same thing with our communication sites here. They have made this extremely extendable. So if I had, say, I had a page on COVID, and I also wanted to have the stats on our internal staff as to how many people were out and how many people were expected to be back. And then also have a news feed on the latest stuff that's going on with COVID. You know, I could host all of that on a SharePoint site, but then I can do the individual pieces based on whichever technology fit the need very easily on this. And so again, very, very, very amazing what you can do with these technologies. So hopefully with this, you've gotten a sense of how easy it is to basically create these solutions in a Lego style fashion. I didn't even touch upon Power Apps or Flow with this, because you can even take it even further there. So one of the other things that you could do with Power BI is if you have a card visual in here, sorry, I'm trying to find my mouse, it's on the wrong screen. You can kick off flows automatically, or Power Automate flows automatically from your content. So say if I had that COVID, you know, that COVID dashboard, and I said if more than 5 people in my business unit are out at a given time, I need to do an escalation. Well, then you can extend the escalation or have the escalation happen automatically based on that figure in your Power BI dashboard, kick off a Power Automate flow to do the escalation actions. And then you could actually have a Power App sitting on the page right next to it where you could be entering information, you could be updating, you could be providing additional status, that sort of thing. So if you've seen some of the solutions that the Power Apps team has put out recently, that was they're working on the same context, that we need the solution, we need the information, we need the answers where the user is sitting at that time, not having them have to click out and go find it. I'm very hopeful that when we get to the point of Cortex being involved, we will have even more information. In fact, one of the things I promised was how to get to your Cortex information. So if you're going to be one of the folks that gets that in the near future, and I strongly suggest you take a good look at it. If you haven't before, it's mind-blowing. I think it's the beginning of something massively big. I have a blog post coming out on that soon, but I have a customer who's in the program right now, and one of the things about it is it's not very obvious where you find the data. And so one of the things that we have within Power BI here, so I'm connected, of course it's going to take it a minute here, I'm connected to a SharePoint site right now. In fact, that's where all this data is coming from. And if I get this thing to come down, there we go. If I go to my, one more time. All right, So I'm trying to get to, let's go to transform data. That's where I want to be. Sorry about that. And of course it opens in the wrong window, so we're going to move this over to the other side. But in here, we have opened up a query, if you will, to the SharePoint list that we're using. Now, one of the things about list is you have list for your list, which is what Power BI pulls back, but it also pulls back the list information related to a document library. So if I'm looking at this information that it pulled back, if you notice in here, it says documents. That's interesting. So how does that work? Excuse me. So I'm going to duplicate this query like this. And I'm going to start from the very beginning here. So I'm going to basically delete everything till end, which be careful doing this, folks. I've lost like 3 hours of work doing that in the wrong spot before. But I'm going to start at the source. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to click on documents. And so if you have a document library in your site and you connect through the list connector, not the document folder connector, you get access to all the metadata related to your documents. So when I'm looking through this, I go, oh, there's all this cool stuff in here. So if I went to field values as text, then if I'm looking for, in the E3 instance you have today, there is the predecessor to what Cortex was, and these are the OCR fields. So if I do OCR, or computer vision, see, vision, like that. Oh, media, sorry, I knew it was one of those three. Okay, there we go. So we have auto tags. So this is, if I upload a photo to the document library, it will automatically tag what's in there, which is pretty cool because if I'm trying to keep track of what people are putting in my document libraries, this is very happy to have this. So I'm just going to add all these so you can take a look at it. And again, the information in the existing functionality is very rudimentary. You don't have a lot of control over what it pulls out. But in the case of like a photo, so we had one client that their field services technicians, when they were out in the field and they encountered a problem, were taking photos of where the problem was, and the GPS was on their phone. So uploading it to a SharePoint site, I can automatically extract the latitude and longitude of where that was taken and then map that somewhere. And so here I could see that this was a screenshot. So if I get to these fields here, I can actually do a lot more with them. So I just want to give you a brief look at this. This is a session we're going to have a deep dive on in the upcoming SharePoint Collaboration Summit. When we have this in March, we're going to go really deep. Sean Squires and I are probably going to be the ones presenting it, and we're going to be telling lots of dad jokes throughout the whole thing. So be warned, you've had a year to toughen up. It's going to be the longest hour of your life, but trust me, it'll be worth every minute of it. And with that, I want to find out if there's any questions in the chat since we're rolling up in about 2 minutes till done time. So how are we doing here? I'm going to get back to my teams.
There haven't been any questions. I've been watching, but we've got one comment of great session, but other than that, nothing so far.
Okay. Again, if you have any types of needs around this sort of thing, what I would suggest, we've actually put together a website that you might be interested in. So especially if you're in the SharePoint space and you're looking to use Power BI, and if my mouse will work today, there we go. If you go to https get started with powerbi.com. What we've done is we put together we got together with some of the MVPs and put together a resource page that said, how do I get started? What are the things I need to discuss with my management? What are the skills I need to learn? So things like visual design. And not all of us are visual designers, not all of us are Picassos, but at least you can understand the basics of how to create a usable, accessible, understandable report. And there's some great stuff out here. Now You See It is still one of my favorite books ever on visualization because it was mind-blowing what Stephen Few could do with black and white and nothing else, no color whatsoever. These dashboards were beautiful. If you go down here, if you're really looking for the bigger picture, I recommend Optimizing Data to Learning to Action. This talks about how do we turn our organizations not just into data-centric decision-making cultures, but how do we actually turn this into learning organizations, and how do we start leveraging the data and the learning that we get from it into actions and assets? We also have some really good books put out by some of the other MVPs around analyzing data. If you're not listening to the Bifocal podcast or Guy in a Cube podcast, you're missing out, man. This is some great stuff here. So please, please, please tune in. There's a lot of good information there. We also have the definitive guide to DAX, which eventually you're going to have to learn. I've got this sitting on my desk right here next to my monitor. It is my Bible. Marco and Alberto have done a magnificent job putting this book together. I think it's in its 2nd edition now. Always worth buying. And then if you need community help, we have the Power BI communities here that are listed. We have some extremely helpful websites like the Bicountant site. I love her site. She does some incredible stuff with Power Query here. BI Polar with Matthew Rush. He's wonderful as well, especially if you need to know about data flows. He's the man there. We have some great tools, and at the bottom here, we have put together a series of articles and videos to take you through, how do I connect to a SharePoint list? There's some known issues there that we help you work around. We also talk about how do you keep people from breaking your model every time they rename a column. Everybody hits this issue about a month in. And then we talk about other common issues that we have in Power BI with SharePoint. So all this information is out here for you to take in. For your taking. Again, get started with powerbi.com. Take a look at it, and hopefully that'll answer any questions that you have there. Post a comment if you have any further questions. And thank you so very much for coming tonight, for attending the session. It's very important then, if you go back here, we are giving away, we have a raffle. Let me go back to my screen here, if it will switch over. There we go. So if you visit the vendor information, watch the videos, submit your answers, and you have to have at least 5 correct answers. They're giving away these Oculus Quest. And let me tell you, I have been on the hunt for one and I can't find them. They're sold out everywhere. So this is a huge deal. And also please consider giving to one of the charities that we're trying to support. So the links are here as well. And then finally, we really need your feedback. We really use this feedback to help make these sessions so much better. So again, thank you for joining us. Please give us speaker feedback and event feedback. I look forward to hearing from you, and also look forward to seeing you in another virtual conference soon. And with that, we'll wrap it up and we'll turn it over to the next speaker who's coming up shortly.